This is Hannah and Aaron with Tech Times, and today I am speaking with Michelle Bata from Clark University. Hi, how's it going, Michelle?
Good. I'm happy to be here with you.
So, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do at Clark.
Sure. So I'm the Associate Dean and Executive Director of Clark's LEAP Center. And LEAP, L-E-E-P, stands for Liberal Education and Effective Practice. And LEAP is basically Clark's version or model of undergraduate education, thinking very critically about how we can put liberal arts into practice. But in the LEAP Center, we're home to the offices of academic advising, career services, community engagement, study abroad, and the Writing Center. We're broadly known as Clark Center for advising, experiential education, and careers.
That's great. So, what do you think you're doing at the LEAP Center that's different than what other schools might offer?
That's a great question. I think there are two fundamental streams or initiatives that we're working on that are different from what other people are doing. The first is a very intentional and deep focus on student advising. So when you think about like the college to career transition, a lot of schools focus on, okay, well, what do we need to do academically to get students to kind of think about how the academics connect to careers? How can we beef up career services? And both of those things are really necessary, but they're forgetting the most important player, which is the student. And students need help navigating this maze of information and opportunities and experiences. They need to think about it, reflect on it, get some guidance, get some feedback. And so that's what we do. We kind of consider ourselves very student-centered, and in terms of our advising model, we put students at the center of it and think very critically and developmentally about, what do they need when they're in their first semester of their first year. At that point, you don't want to talk about internships or careers because they're still figuring out what the library is. So how can we kind of scaffold all the things that they need in a very intentional developmental way so that when they're really ready to think about making that transition, they're already prepared and we're not scrambling or doing any kind of remedial work. So that's the first thing we're working on. The second thing that we're working on that I think is different is what we think about is really kind of proactive career readiness that takes place, or preparation that takes place outside of the classroom. We've done a lot of work really trying to leverage our contacts with employers and with our alumni to try to increase the number of opportunities available to our students. And a lot of people have been stepping up to the plate, which is fabulous. But with that comes a certain obligation to ensure that we're putting our best foot forward with regards to our students. And, we want to make sure that as we trade on our reputation and they trade on theirs, our students actually have an appreciation for all of these efforts. So we've been putting a lot of emphasis into guided learning, making sure that our students are not just being placed in these opportunities, but that they're able to make connections with their academics, that they're prepared in terms of the world of work and their professionalism, and that they understand and can articulate what they're learning and leverage that for opportunities later on.
So what kind of success rate have you seen with students getting into career successfully since this program started, or since you changed the way that you approach career readiness?
It's a great question. It's a difficult question to answer because smack in the middle, so we're in 5 years into the effort. Right. And smack in the middle of that effort, the National Association of Colleges and Employers changed the definition of first destination outcomes. So our first destination outcomes before don't match our first destination outcomes now. So it's a little hard to measure. But I can say that we're very proud of our first destination rate. We have 97% of our students launch 6 months after graduation with an 85% knowledge rate. It doesn't get much better than that. Where we see some of the biggest changes with our students, and this is actually what we were really hoping for, is more of a cultural shift. When I first got to Clark, one of the new initiatives that Clark started was a funding program. We were going to pay students to do internships and undergraduate research and projects. We couldn't give that money away. It was April and we were hunting down students and saying, hey, we have this fantastic opportunity and we're going to pay you to do it. And they're like, yeah, no thanks. Seriously. Nowadays, they're banging down our doors in October. We have more than double traffic to our office. We're actively turning students away. We have an average of a 3-week wait to get into CS. Exactly. last year, for the first time ever, held a reverse career fair where we invited employers to come speak to student groups. We engaged over 50 new employers, and the room was packed with students and the students were so excited to kind of talk about what they were doing and how it connects to the workforce. So it's, for us, the stats are fine, where our students go. We always have these great stories of students who end up at Ernst & Young and Amazon, so do other schools. But for us, it's the culture of, like, this is what I can do with a Clark education that has been most impressive and most important to us.
And I think there is a difference between, being a good student and taking the right classes and getting into a finance job or something like that, and taking the initiative to do more and to get involved and to get work experience before graduation that can lead to more leadership opportunities in the future.
Exactly. I totally agree.
So we are here today at the LearnLaunch conference, and you were speaking on a panel. So can you tell me a bit about what that panel was about and what conclusions were made from it?
Sure. So the panel was on connecting colleges to the workplace. And I was on a panel with the CEO and co-founder of UConnect, with the CEO and co-founder of People Grove. Full disclosure, Clark is a People Grove client. And Christine Ortiz, who is a professor at MIT and also one of the co-founders of Station One, a new opportunity for students in the sciences. So it's a fantastic panel. And what's interesting is that we're all working actively on the same problem, just coming at it from different dimensions. And it really is, how can we get students? So I think there are two things. So how can we get students to really connect to or start thinking about and start connecting to career-related opportunities and information, right? So that comes from a UConnect. How can we kind of take this landscape and this universe of information and bring it to students in a way that makes sense for them? And with People Growth, same thing with mentors. Like, how can we connect them with other people who can be helpful? Christine and what we're doing at Clark is, how can we connect students to opportunities that would be helpful to them? And so, one of the big takeaways from the panel, or this particular session, is that there's so much out there, and a lot of what's incumbent upon all of us who are in the field is to try to make everything easily digestible and deliver it in a very targeted way to our students to really help them. It's not the case that our students don't have opportunities or don't have resources. We're just not doing a good enough job of getting it in front of them. So that's one takeaway. But the other things that we talked about were, how can people who are in this landscape be much more intentional about connecting these efforts to academics? So I talked a little bit about that in terms of the work that Clark has been doing in terms of the curriculum. Adam talked about that in terms of getting alumni incorporated into courses and then connecting to the major. And then, of course, Christine talked about that in terms of Station One and some of the work that they've been doing at MIT. And then we all kind of agreed that going forward over the next 5 years, what are going to be some of the biggest trends? Perhaps one of the biggest trends would be an intentionality with regard to a college to career approach. Particularly since the 2008 recession, everyone has been talking about this, colleges and universities and influencers and thought leaders. How can we kind of operationalize a return on investment in higher education? And so a lot of people have been pumping resources into this area for a while now. And that is, in terms of a lean implementation, a smart approach to doing that. But now that you've already have a kind of a base level or foundation established, to go deeper into it, and more importantly, to bring on board some of those people who have been resisting some of that language, there has to be a more targeted, nuanced, intentional approach to connecting colleges to the workplace. So that was some of the takeaways from the session.
I agree, and you're not the only person who has said that. So what do you think is the number one thing that higher ed leaders or universities can do to help connect their students to the workforce?
That's a tough question. And I suspect the answer would be different depending on the student population and the school. For us at Clark, I've said this to our president, if I had to put my money on any one thing that we had to do to really change the culture of our students and connecting them to the workplace earlier, it would be really making sure that students had exposure to the world of work earlier in their first year and their sophomore year. And that doesn't mean placing students in internships. It doesn't mean sending them to the career fair. It might be something a little more nuanced. They do a lot of programming in the residence halls. They do a lot of volunteer opportunities. Why not connect them to an employer in that way? They have leadership conferences. Bring in an alum who's in the workforce and have them connect leadership to what they're currently doing in their employment. There are a lot of more covert ways that we could build career education into the undergraduate student experience at a much earlier level. And what that does is that it opens them up and it makes them understand that that's part of their undergraduate trajectory. It removes a lot of the anxiety associated with a job search, or figuring out where they're going or figuring out who they are. And more importantly, it gets them connected to potential resources earlier on. So that would be my bet.
That sounds solid. And I think I've seen that. I've seen the, colleges where the culture is very internship or, extracurricular activity focused. They tend to have a more practical approach. The students are able to get jobs more quickly. I think that that's pretty common. So, what would you like to see in the future? What would you like to see most colleges doing to ensure that their students are ready for careers?
Sure. So I would go back to the comment I made earlier about taking a more intentional and nuanced approach. And also go back to this idea of not forgetting, you have colleges and the academic space and the employer space, but not forgetting about the student. Because you can put all these programs into place, you can bring all these employers to campus, you can bring all the mentors together. But if the student is not able to see a clear path forward, they're not going to move, no matter what the resources are. And that's important. And so when we take a student-centered approach, particularly with a liberal arts student, we have to remember that they're not motivated by career. They're not motivated by profession. They're motivated by passion, right? They approach their undergraduate career in terms of who am I? What is my question? What am I interested in? And they're really turned off when you start talking about jobs. We shouldn't try to change that culture for them. We should start where they are, meet them there, and say, okay, this is your passion. How are you going to see it played out? So that's what I would like to see some emphasis placed on.
That would be great. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. You too.